A homeless 4-year-old girl finds a man beating a 3-month-old baby. But when she loses hope, a millionaire appears and something happens. Comment. What you think will happen, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The dark sky of Harmony Creek, Ohio, poured down a fine, persistent rain that afternoon in March, turning the dirt roads of the Sunnyside trailer park into small, muddy rivers. Little Lily, just 6 years old, pressed her skinny body against the wet, chain-link fence, her wide brown eyes filled with terror. What she had just seen in the yard of the rundown trailer in front of her was something she would never forget. Ricky Joe, a 42-year-old man with breath that reeked of cheap beer, was holding a baby, barely 3 months old, by the arms, shaking the child violently while shouting obscenities. The baby's desperate cries cut through the damp afternoon, air mingling with the sound of the rain drumming on the corrugated metal roofs. "Shut your yap! Shut your yap!" Ricky Joe bellowed, his slurred voice betraying his inebriated state. Little Mikey, just 3 months old, cried even louder, his tiny face red with distress. Lily trembled, not just from the cold rain soaking her tattered clothes, but from the painful memory that the scene evoked. 2 years on the streets had taught her what it meant to suffer, but seeing another being so defenseless going through, it made her little heart ache in a way she barely understood. Her small hands gripped the chain-link fence as she fought the urge to run. She had learned the hard way that interfering in other people's problems could be dangerous, especially for a lone child like her. But the baby's cries were heartbreaking. It was at that moment that a luxury car, a silver sedan that stood out like a sore thumb in the trailer park, pulled up at the corner. The tires crunched as it braked in the mud, and Lily watched a distinguished man get out of the vehicle. He wore a well-tailored grey suit, even though it was just an ordinary afternoon, and his silver hair was neatly combed. Arthur Livingston, 68 years old, had stopped to buy cigarettes at the corner store when he heard the shouting. His experienced eyes quickly assessed the situation. A clearly intoxicated man mistreating a defenseless child. There was no time to hesitate. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Arthur strode across the muddy yard, his voice filled with authority. His leather shoes, which cost more than many families in the trailer park earned in a month, sank into the mud. But he didn't care. Ricky Joe turned, swaying slightly, still holding the baby dangerously. "It's none of your business, old man. Here's my kid. Kid or not, you're hurting him." Arthur moved closer, his hands outstretched. "Give me the child, now!" The tension in the air was palpable. Lily, still hidden, held her breath. Ricky Joe was younger and stronger, but there was something in Arthur's posture, a natural confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed, that made the drunken man hesitate. "You don't know nothing." Ricky Joe shook the baby again, and Mikey cried even louder. "This kid cries all day long. Don't let me sleep, don't let me drink in peace." "He's a baby," Arthur said, his voice growing firmer. "That's what babies do. They cry. They need care, not violence." The businessman took another step forward, and something in his eyes made Ricky Joe recoil instinctively. Perhaps it was the determination of a man who had faced many challenges in life, or perhaps it was simply the presence of someone sober in the face of his drunkenness. But Ricky Joe began to loosen his grip on the baby. "Give him to me," Arthur repeated, holding out his hands. "I'm not going to call anyone. I just want the child to be safe." For a moment that seemed eternal, the two men stared at each other. The rain continued to fall, and the only sound besides the drops was Mikey's increasingly weak cry, as if he were losing strength. Finally, perhaps realizing that he had attracted too much attention, Ricky Joe handed the baby roughly to Arthur. "Take him then. See if you can get him to stop crying." Arthur received the child carefully, cradling him against his chest. Immediately, he began to rock Mikey gently, murmuring soothing words. The baby, feeling safe for the first time that terrible afternoon, began to calm down. "I'm leaving," Ricky Joe grumbled, staggering towards the trailer. "But you'll regret getting involved." In my life. It was only when Ricky Joe disappeared inside the trailer that Arthur noticed a small figure behind the fence. Lily was there, her large eyes fixed on him with a mixture of admiration and fear. Her clothes were soaked, and her brown hair clung to her wet face. "Hello," Arthur said softly, still cradling the baby. "How long have you been there?" Lily didn't answer immediately. 2 years on the streets had taught her to distrust adults, even those who seemed kind, but there was something different about this man. He had risked his own safety to save a child he didn't even know. "Weren't you scared of him?" she asked. Finally, her small voice almost lost in the sound of the rain. Arthur smiled sadly. "I was, but sometimes we have to be scared and do the right thing anyway." At that moment, other people began to appear. Neighbors who had heard the commotion came out of their homes, and soon a small crowd formed around Arthur and the baby. An older woman approached, recognizing the child. "That's Letitia's boy," she said, shaking her head. "Poor girl. Works all day at the diner and comes home to put up with Ricky Joe's drunken rages." Arthur frowned. "Where's the mother now?" "Working. Doesn't get back till late." The woman held out her arms. "I can take care of the baby till she gets here." As Arthur carefully passed Mikey to the neighbor, his eyes met Lily's again. The girl was still there, watching everything with an intensity that moved him deeply. "And you?" he asked, approaching the fence. "Where are your parents?" Lily lowered her eyes. "I don't have any. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, someone to take care of you. My grandma died when I was 4. The answer came in a whisper. "I've been taking care of myself since then." Arthur felt a pang in his chest. 2 children at risk in a single day, one being mistreated by his own father, the other completely abandoned to her own fate. The world seemed especially cruel on that rainy afternoon. "Are you hungry?" he asked gently. Lily nodded shyly. It had been more than a day since she had eaten anything substantial. "Then let's take care of that." Arthur opened the door of his car. "I know a place that makes the best burgers in Harmony Creek." As he drove through the wet streets with Lily in the passenger seat, Arthur had no idea that this chance encounter would change both of their lives forever. The girl, still distrustful but tempted by the promise of hot food, looked out the window at the Ohio landscape. Neither of them knew that the next 6 months would be a journey of painful discoveries, revealed secrets, and a fight for survival that would test the limits of what it means to be family. The home plate diner was almost empty that rainy afternoon. Arthur chose a booth in the back, away from the windows, where Lily could eat without feeling watched. The girl looked suspiciously at the plate of steaming cheeseburgers in front of her, as if she still didn't believe it was real. "You can eat," Arthur said softly, pushing the plate closer to her. "And if you want more, just ask." Lily picked up a burger with trembling hands and took a small bite. The taste of the warm bun and seasoned beef made her eyes fill with tears. It had been so long since she had eaten something so delicious. "Slow down," Arthur warned, seeing how she devoured the food. "Your stomach needs to get used to it." As he watched the girl eat, 1,000 questions ran through the businessman's head. How could such a small child survive alone on the streets? Where did she sleep? How did she get food? The cruel reality of that situation bothered him deeply. "Lily," he said, testing the name she had whispered when he asked. "It's a pretty name. Did your grandma choose it?" The girl stopped chewing and nodded. "She said it was the name of a flower, that I'd grow up pretty like a flower." And she was right. Arthur smiled sadly. "Tell me about her." Grandma Mary worked at a big house on the other side of town. Cleaned, cooked, took care of everything. Lily swallowed the bite of burger before continuing. She always came home tired, but she never complained, said it was to give me a better life. What happened to her? She got sick, started coughing, a lot losing weight. The medicine was too expensive. Lily's voice became even lower. I tried to help, begged for money on the street, but it was never enough. Arthur felt a lump in his throat. He knew that reality well. In his construction supply business, he often dealt with families who struggled to survive, hard-working people who couldn't afford even the most basic medicines. After she passed, what did you do? The lady who rented us the little room kicked me out, said a kid couldn't live there alone. Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I tried to stay at the house where Grandma worked, but the bosses wouldn't even let me in. The businessman did mental calculations. If Lily was 6 years old now and had been on the street for 2 years, it meant that a 4-year-old child had been thrown out on the street to fend for herself. The cruelty of that revolted him. Where do you sleep? Depends. Lily shrugged, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sometimes under the awning of the drugstore, sometimes on the park bench when there's no one around. There's a space under the creek bridge that's dry, but it's dangerous at night. Arthur looked out the window of the diner. The rain continued to fall, and he imagined that little girl curling up in any place she could find, trying to protect herself from the cold and damp. His conscience wouldn't allow that to continue, at least not that night. Lily, what would you say if I offered you a place to sleep tonight? A warm place with a real bed? The girl stopped eating immediately, her eyes filling with distrust. 2 years on the streets had taught her that offers like that always came with a price. Why? She asked, her voice full of suspicion. What do you want in return? The question broke Arthur's heart. A 6-year-old child had already learned that nothing in life was free, that kindness always hid ulterior motives. Nothing, he answered honestly. I just can't go home knowing you're going to sleep in the rain. And tomorrow? Are you going? To kick me out in the morning? Arthur hesitated. He hadn't thought about tomorrow, just reacted to the impulse to help. But looking at that girl, seeing the mixture of hope and fear in her eyes, he realized that he couldn't offer just a temporary solution. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, he said sincerely, but I promise I won't abandon you on the street again. Lily studied him for long moments as if trying to read his soul. Finally, she nodded almost imperceptibly. The ride to Arthur's house was done in silence. Lily watched the familiar streets through the window, but now from a different perspective, sitting in the soft seat of a car, protected from the rain, with her stomach full for the first time in days. Arthur's house was in the Oakwood Estates, the most affluent part of Harmony Creek. It was a single-story house, but spacious, with a well-kept garden and an automatic gate. To Lily, it looked like a palace. Is this where you live? She asked. Impressed. It is. Arthur parked in the garage. My wife and I used to live here together. Now it's just me. Where is she? In heaven, Arthur answered simply. She passed away 3 years ago. Lily nodded with understanding. She knew what it meant to lose someone important. Inside the house, everything was organized and clean, but there was a coldness that didn't go unnoticed. Expensive furniture, but lifeless, walls with beautiful paintings, but no recent photos. It was the home of someone who had stopped living along with the person they loved. You must be tired, Arthur said, turning on the lights. I'm going to prepare a warm bath for you. A bath? Lily's eyes widened. It had been months since she had taken a real bath with hot water and soap. Of course, and then we can see if we can find some clothes that fit you. While the water was heating up, Arthur looked in his closets for something that could serve as sleepwear for the girl. He found an old t-shirt that he used to sleep in, which would be huge on her, but it would do. Lily, he called from the bathroom door. It's all ready. The towels are there, and the shampoo too. I don't know if I remember how to do it. Her voice came softly. It's been a long time. Arthur's heart broke once again. That's okay. It's like riding a bike, you never really forget, and if you need help, just call. 20 minutes later, Lily came out of the bathroom, looking like a completely different child. Her brown hair shone clean, her skin had a healthy rosy color, and she smelled like lavender soap. Arthur's t-shirt went down to her feet, making her look even smaller. Better? He asked, smiling. Much better. Lily smiled shyly back. It was the first time he had seen her smile for real. Arthur prepared the guest room, putting clean sheets on the bed and leaving a glass of water on the bedside table. Lily watched everything in silence, still not completely believing that this was happening. "Good night, Lily," he said from the "Doctor, if you need anything, my room is at the end of the hall." "Arthur," she called when he was already leaving. "Yes?" "Thank you." That night, for the first time in 2 years, Lily slept in a real bed, protected from the rain and the cold. But on the other side of the house, Arthur stayed awake late, staring at the ceiling and wondering what he had gotten himself into. Did he have the resources to help a child? Did he know how to care for someone so small and traumatized? And more importantly, was he prepared for the complications that would certainly come? What Arthur didn't know was that his financial problems were much worse than he thought, and that keeping Lily safe would be only the first of many challenges that awaited him. Arthur woke up early the next day, as he always did, but for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel completely alone at home. Lily was still sound asleep in the guest room, and he was careful not to make any noise while preparing breakfast. When the girl finally appeared in the kitchen, her hair disheveled and the oversized t-shirt dragging on the floor, Arthur felt a strange pang in his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced since Carol died, the feeling of having someone to care for. "Good morning," she said shyly, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning, sweetie. Did you sleep well?" "It was the best night of my life," Lily replied with touching sincerity. "The bed was so soft I thought I was dreaming." Arthur prepared a plate with toast, butter, and warm milk with sugar. Nothing too elaborate, but for Lily, it was a feast. As she ate, he watched her careful movements, as if she still feared that it would all disappear at any moment. "Lily, we need to talk about a few things," he said gently. "You can't just disappear from the world. There must be people looking for you, authorities who need to know where you are." The girl's face closed. "Immediately, I don't want to go to a foster home." "I'm not talking about a foster home, but there are rules, documents. Do you have a birth certificate? Any paper that proves who you are?" Grandma kept everything in a sewing box, but when she died, the landlady took everything to pay the debts. Lily lowered her eyes. "She said you can't eat paper." Arthur sighed. The situation was more complicated than he had imagined. A child without documents, without a known family, living illegally for 2 years. Any attempt to regularize her situation could result in the girl being lost to the system. "Okay, let's take it slow," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "For now, you stay here with me." "Really?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Really? But we'll have to establish some basic rules." The rest of the morning was spent creating a routine. Arthur explained how the house worked, where things were, which rooms she could use. Lily absorbed everything with the attention of someone who had never had rules that weren't just about survival. Around 10 o'clock, Arthur prepared to go to the office. His company, Livingston Construction Supplies, was downtown, and he couldn't miss it without a justified reason. "Are you going to leave me alone?" Lily asked, a touch of panic in her voice. "Just for a few hours. I need to work." He hesitated, seeing the fear in her eyes. "Or would you like to come with me?" The girl's face lit up again. The idea of being alone, even in a comfortable house, terrified her more than she wanted to admit. Arthur's office was in an old building downtown. On the ground floor was the supply warehouse, and on the upper floor were the administrative offices. Lily was fascinated by the movement of employees carrying bags of cement, stacks of bricks, and rolls of fencing. Mr. Livingston, Mark, the company accountant, approached as soon as he saw them. He was a middle-aged man, always impeccably dressed and with a calculator permanently in his hand. "We need to talk about those urgent documents." Arthur noticed how Mark looked at Lily with barely disguised curiosity, but decided not to give explanations. "Can it wait? I'm showing the company to Lily." "Sure, but it's really urgent," Mark insisted, a tone of nervousness in his voice that Arthur didn't notice. The tour of the company filled Lily with admiration. She asked questions about everything: how the bricks were made, what so many different types of screws were for, why there were so many people working there. Arthur answered patiently, surprised by the girl's sharp intelligence. "Do you control all this?" she asked, impressed. "I'm the owner, yes. I built this company little by little, over 25 years. You must be very rich then." Lily's innocent question hit Arthur like a punch in the stomach. If she knew the truth about his financial situation, she might not look at him with so much admiration. At lunchtime, Arthur took Lily to eat at a local diner, a simple but clean place where area employees had their meals. The girl ate with gusto, still marveling at the possibility of having guaranteed food. "Arthur," she said, between bites of mac and cheese. "Yes?" "Why did you help me? Yesterday when you found me, you didn't know me." It was a question he himself had asked himself several times since the previous night. "Remember the baby we saved yesterday? Little Mikey." "That's right. If I hadn't interfered, something terrible could have happened to him. Sometimes we can't pretend we didn't see the suffering of others." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Grandma used to say that you reap what you sow, that doing good always comes back to you in some way. Your grandma was a wise woman. She would have liked you," Lily said with conviction. "She always said that good people are recognized by what they do, not by what they say." When they returned to the office after lunch, Mark was waiting with an even more tense expression. "Mr. Livingston, we really need to talk. It's about the bank loans." "Not now, Mark. But, sir, they're pressing. And there are the supplier invoices that were due last week." Arthur cast a meaningful look at Lily, who was playing with an old abacus in the corner of the room. "Later," he said firmly. But Lily, despite being apparently distracted, caught the tension in the conversation. Her 2 years on the streets had sharpened her perception to detect problems, and she realized that something was wrong in the conversation between the two men. At the end of the afternoon, when they returned home, Lily was quieter than usual. During dinner, she watched Arthur carefully, as if trying to read something in his expression. "Are you worried about something?" she asked suddenly. Arthur almost choked on the piece of chicken. "Why do you ask that?" "You act different when that man with the calculator talks to you. And today, after he talked about money, you got sad." The girl's perception impressed and frightened him at the same time. He had tried to hide his worries, but apparently hadn't succeeded. "It's just work stuff, Lily. Nothing you need to worry about. But if they're things that make you sad, I want to help." Arthur's heart tightened. How could he explain to a 6-year-old child that his company was on the verge of bankruptcy? That the bank loans were suffocating his finances, that he had been discreetly selling his personal belongings to keep up appearances? "Thank you, sweetie. But some worries are only for adults." That night, after Lily went to sleep, Arthur locked himself in his private office and opened the drawer where he kept the documents that Mark had tried to discuss during the day. Spreadsheets with red numbers, collection letters, notices of tax lien. The reality was brutal. Livingston Construction Supplies was failing. The bad investments of recent years, combined with the economic downturn and unfair competition, had created an unsustainable situation. He estimated having at most 3 months before being forced to close its doors. Arthur looked out the office window, seeing the light on in the room where Lily was sleeping. How could he take care of a child if he couldn't even keep his own company running? How could he offer stability if his life was falling apart? The weight of the responsibility he had assumed began to become real. Lily trusted him, believed that he could protect her and take care of her. But the truth was that Arthur could barely take care of himself. While organizing the papers back in the drawer, he didn't notice that Lily had woken up to drink water and was standing in the half-open door of the office, watching his expression of despair. The girl quietly returned to her room, but sleep didn't come easily. For the first time since arriving at that house, Lily wondered if her new life wouldn't be just another illusion about to fall apart. 3 weeks had passed since Lily had arrived at Arthur's house, and a comfortable routine had been established between them. The girl accompanied the businessman to the office every morning, where she had become a beloved little mascot for the employees. She helped organize screws by size, stamped documents carefully, and asked questions that sometimes surprised the adults with her perspicacity. But that morning in April, something was different. Arthur seemed more tense than usual, and Mark had arrived at the office even before him, which was unusual. Lily noticed how the two men talked in whispers whenever she approached, and how they stopped abruptly when they noticed her presence. "Lily," Arthur called around 10 o'clock, "why don't you go play with those wooden blocks in the warehouse? I need to take care of some things up here." The girl went down obediently, but her curiosity had been aroused. Instead of playing, she silently climbed the stairs and stood near the half-open door of the office, where she could hear the tense conversation between Arthur and Mark. "There's no way to postpone it any longer, Mr. Livingston." Mark's voice sounded desperate. "The bank is demanding full payment of the loan by the end of the month, and the suppliers are threatening to cut off supplies." "How much time do we have exactly?" Arthur asked, his voice filled with weariness. 2 weeks, maybe 3, if we can negotiate. And if we sell the rest of the old equipment? I've already calculated it. It won't cover even half the debt." Mark paused. "Sir, maybe it's time to consider selling the company." Lily held her breath. Sell the company? That meant Arthur would lose everything? "No." Arthur's answer was firm. "This company is everything I've built in my life, all that's left of me, and Carol. But if we can't get the funds, I'll find a solution. I always have." Lily went down the stairs on tiptoes, her heart beating fast. Now she understood why Arthur was so worried. He was losing everything, and she was just another problem in his complicated life. During lunch, the girl was exceptionally quiet. Arthur noticed her change of mood, but attributed it to the fact that she was still adapting to her new life. "Is everything okay, Lily?" "Arthur," she said, looking him directly in the eyes, "if I weren't here, would your life be easier?" The question caught him off guard. "Why are you asking that?" "I know that taking care of me costs money. Food, clothes, medicine if I get sick." Her voice became smaller. "I can go back to the streets if that will help you." Arthur felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. The idea that Lily blamed herself for his financial problems devastated him completely. "Lily, listen carefully to what I'm going to say." He leaned towards her, his hands gently holding the girl's arms. "My problems have nothing to do with you. They existed long before we met. And I would never, do you hear me, never think of sending you away because of money. But I heard you talking to the man with the calculator." "You heard?" Arthur sighed. He should have imagined that the girl would find out. "Lily, it's true that I'm going through difficulties at work, but that doesn't change anything between us. You're part of my life now. What if you lose everything? Then we'll find a way to start over, together." That afternoon, while Arthur tried to negotiate, With suppliers on the phone, Lily had an idea. She had noticed that he always kept important papers in a specific drawer in the office. Maybe, if she could better understand his problems, she could find a way to help. When Arthur left for an urgent meeting with the bank manager, leaving her in the care of Joan, the secretary, Lily pretended to be playing and quietly went up to the office. The drawer wasn't locked. Inside, there were piles of documents that she couldn't read completely, but she recognized some words and numbers. There were letters with bank letterheads, papers with a lot of red numbers, and a thick folder with the name Tax Lien written in large letters. It was while rummaging through these papers that Lily found something that caught her attention. An old document, yellowed by time, with the name Joshua Ferrell written several times. There was a photo stapled to the paper, showing a middle-aged man next to a young woman carrying a baby. Lily couldn't read everything that was written, but she managed to understand some things. The paper talked about theft, dismissal, and something about money that had disappeared. The date showed that it had happened 5 years ago. "What are you doing there?" Mark's voice made her jump in fright. He had climbed the stairs silently and found her rummaging through the documents. I was just looking," Lily stammered, trying to hide the paper she had found. "These things aren't for children." Mark approached, his expression more serious than she had ever seen. "Give it here." Lily handed over the document, but etched in her memory the name and face of the man in the photo. There was something in Mark's haste to hide that paper that aroused even more her curiosity. "Don't tell Mr. Livingston that you were rummaging here, okay?" Mark said, quickly putting away the document. "He already has too many worries." Lily nodded, but a seed of distrust had been planted in her mind. Why didn't Mark want Arthur to know about her discovery? When Arthur returned from the meeting at the bank, his face was darker than ever. The answer had been negative. There would be no extension of the deadline, nor reduction of interest. The situation was becoming desperate. "How did it go?" Mark asked anxiously. "Bad, very bad." Arthur slumped into his chair, seeming to have aged 10 years in a few hours. "They want everything paid off in 15 days, or they're going to foreclose on the company." Lily, who had pretended to be playing in the corner of the room, absorbed every word of the conversation. 15 days. Arthur had only 15 days to save everything he had built. That night during dinner, the girl watched Arthur carefully. He tried to maintain a normal facade, asking questions about how had been his day, but she could see the weight of worry in his hunched shoulders. "Arthur," she said suddenly, "who is Joshua Ferrell?" Arthur almost dropped his glass of water. "Where did you hear that name?" "I found a paper today, with his picture." "Lily, how many times do I have to tell you not to rummage through my documents?" There was an irritation in his voice that she had never heard before. "Sorry," she mumbled, lowering her eyes. "But who is he?" Arthur sighed heavily. "Joshua was an employee of mine. He worked in the warehouse for over 10 years. He was a good person, had a young daughter. What happened to him? 5 years ago, we discovered that money was missing from the company's safe. A lot of money. Joshua was one of the few who had access, so..." Arthur didn't finish the sentence. "You thought he stole it?" "The evidence pointed to him. Mark had documented everything carefully. I had no choice but to fire him." Lily frowned. "But what if he didn't steal it?" "Lily, that was a long time ago. Why these questions?" The girl couldn't explain, but something in Mark's nervousness earlier had aroused her suspicion. In the life of the streets, she had learned to identify when people were hiding something, and Mark was definitely hiding something. "I was just curious," she replied, but her mind was already working. That night, after Arthur fell asleep, Lily stayed awake planning. She had heard stories on the streets about people who stole from their bosses, and knew that sometimes the real culprits managed to put the blame on others. What if Joshua really was innocent? And what if Mark knew more about the money that had disappeared than he was saying? A 6-year-old child couldn't do much, but perhaps she could find clues that the adults had missed. Arthur's fate depended on finding a solution in 15 days. Lily didn't know how, but she was determined to help the man who had given her a home and a family when she needed it most. The next morning, Lily woke up with a plan in mind. During breakfast, she watched Arthur trying to hide his anxiety behind forced smiles, and her determination only increased. She needed to find out the truth about Joshua Ferrell. "Arthur," she said as they prepared to go to the office, "can I play in the old archive today? The one in the basement with the dusty boxes? Why there? It's dark and dirty." "I like to imagine stories about the old papers," she lied with the innocence that only a child can fake. "I can pretend I'm a detective," Arthur smiled sadly. "Sure, sweetie. Just be careful with the stairs." The company's basement was really dark and dusty. Cardboard boxes piled up to the ceiling, each marked with different years. Lily quickly found the boxes from 5 years ago and began her investigation. She couldn't read everything, but she recognized numbers and some words. She found cash reports, spreadsheets with Joshua's careful handwriting, and more importantly, discovered that there were security cameras in the company at that time, something that no longer existed. "Lily," the voice of Joan, the secretary, startled her. "Are you okay down there?" "I'm fine, just playing." But Lily had found something interesting. A paper where Mark reported having discovered the disappearance of the money on a Friday, exactly on the day that Joshua had missed work because of a sick daughter. Going up to the office discreetly, she pretended to play while watching Mark work. He was nervous, sweating more than usual, and making phone calls in a low voice whenever Arthur left the room. It was during one of those calls that Lily heard something that chilled her blood. "I can't keep going like this. If they find out the truth about Joshua, I need more time to cover everything." Mark hung up quickly when he noticed that she was nearby. "What do you want, girl?" "Just wanted water," Lily replied innocently, but her heart was beating fast. Her suspicions were being confirmed. During lunch, while Arthur talked to a supplier, Lily asked a casual question to Joan. "Joan, do you remember Mr. Joshua who worked here?" "Of course. He was a good person. We were all shocked when we found out that he—" Joan stopped, realizing that she probably shouldn't talk about that with a child. "My daughter was sick that day," she continued thoughtfully. "I remember because he asked me for the phone number of a pediatrician. The girl had a high fever." "What day was that?" "The day they discovered the theft. Friday. Joshua was absent precisely on the day that the money disappeared, so it was so suspicious." Lily nodded, but something didn't make sense. If Joshua was with his sick daughter, how could he have stolen the money at the company? In the afternoon, when Arthur left for another desperate meeting with creditors, Lily decided to be bolder. She went up to the office and found Mark frantically rummaging through old papers. "What are you doing?" she asked. Mark turned, startled, and Lily saw that he was burning documents in a small metal trash can. "Nothing that interests you, girl. Go play." But Lily had seen enough. Among the flames, she managed to recognize parts of spreadsheets with numbers, and the name of Joshua. Mark was destroying evidence. "Why are you burning Mr. Joshua's papers?" "I'm not." Mark hesitated, realizing that he had been caught red-handed. "They're just old documents that are no longer useful." "That's a lie," Lily said with the desperate courage of someone who has nothing to lose. "You're hiding something. You stole the money, not Mr. Joshua." Mark's face turned livid. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, I do. I heard you on the phone, and Mr. Joshua was with his sick daughter on the day that the money disappeared. He wasn't even here." Mark approached Lily, his expression becoming threatening. "Listen carefully, girl. If you tell Arthur anything of this, I'm going to make you regret it. I can easily convince him that a street kid only brings problems." Fear took over Lily, but anger was stronger. "You're evil. Arthur trusts you. And you're stealing from him. Shut up." Mark grabbed her arm tightly. "You don't understand anything. If it weren't for my loans, this company would have gone bankrupt years ago. I deserved that money. You're hurting me." "Then stop meddling where you shouldn't." It was at that moment that Arthur arrived from the meeting and climbed the stairs. The smell of burning paper and Mark's raised voice alerted him that something was wrong. "What's going on here?" he asked, entering the office. Mark quickly released Lily's arm and tried to compose himself. "Nothing much. The girl was rummaging through important documents, and I was explaining that she couldn't." Arthur looked at Lily, who had tears in her eyes and a red mark on her arm where Mark had grabbed her. His expression hardened immediately. "Mark, never touch Lily again, understand?" "Of course, Mr. Livingston, I apologize. I got carried away." "Lily, come here." Arthur knelt down to the girl's height. "Tell me what happened." Lily looked at Mark, who was staring at her with a threatening expression, then at Arthur. Fear battled with loyalty, but finally courage won. "He was burning papers with Mr. Joshua's name on it, and I heard him on the phone talking about hiding the truth." "What?" Arthur stood up slowly, looking at Mark. "What papers?" "They were just old documents of no importance," Mark stammered. "Let me see. They've already been burned, Mr. Livingston. There's nothing left." Arthur approached the trash can and stirred the ashes. He managed to recover some legible fragments that contained numbers and parts of spreadsheets. His face turned pale as he examined the pieces. "Mark," his voice was dangerously low, "these are the original reports from the Joshua case, aren't they? I can explain." 5 years, Mark. 5 years I carried the guilt of having fired an innocent man. 5 years believing that someone I trusted had betrayed me. Arthur was trembling with anger. "And all along, it was you." "Sir, let me explain. The company was going through difficulties. I needed the money borrowed temporarily." "Temporarily?" Arthur exploded. "You stole $50,000, destroyed a man's reputation, ruined a family's life." Lily watched the scene with wide eyes. $50,000 was more money than she could imagine. And that wasn't all, was it? Arthur continued, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place in his mind. "You continued to steal all these years. The company's financial problems, the loans that we could never pay off. All of that was you." Mark was cornered. "I was going to return everything, I swear. I just needed more time." "Get out," Arthur said coldly. "Get out of my company now, and if I see you again near Lily or any of my employees, I'll call the police." Mark quickly gathered his things and left without looking back, leaving Arthur and Lily alone in the silent office. "Lily!" Arthur knelt down again before her, his hands trembling with emotion. "How did you know?" "I saw him nervous when I found the paper of Mr. Joshua. And in the streets, we learn to recognize when someone is lying." She gently touched Arthur's face. "Will you be able to save the company now?" "I don't know, sweetie. But at least now I know who is the real culprit for our problems." He hugged her tightly. "Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth." But while they hugged, both knew that discovering Mark's betrayal was just the beginning. Arthur still had less than 2 weeks to save his company and now needed to find a way to prove Joshua's innocence and recover the stolen money before it was too late. The following days were a race against time. Arthur spent hours on the phone with lawyers, trying to find a way to recover the money stolen by Mark and prove Joshua's innocence. Lily remained always by his side, watching with admiration as he fought to fix the mistakes of the past. "I managed to locate Joshua," Arthur announced on a rainy morning, exactly 1 week before the bank's deadline. "He's working on a construction site in Springfield. We're going to visit him today." The meeting was emotional and painful at the same time. Joshua Farrell, now 52 years old and with more grey hair, could hardly believe it when he saw Arthur at the door of his small, rented house. "Mr. Livingston." His eyes filled with tears when he heard the sincere apology from his former boss. "Joshua, I messed up your life based on lies. I'll never be able to forgive myself for it." "You didn't know?" Joshua replied, his voice choked with emotion. "I would have believed the evidence too." It was then that Arthur met Letitia, Joshua's daughter, who entered the room carrying little Mikey in her arms. The coincidence left them all speechless. It was the same baby they had saved from Ricky Joe on that rainy day that changed everything. "Dad," Letitia said, her eyes shining as she recognized Arthur. "This is the man who saved my son." The revelation created an even deeper connection between the families. Lily played with Mikey while the adults talked, and Arthur realized how the girl had matured in recent weeks. She was no longer just a scared child from the streets, but someone who knew how to fight for what was right. "Mr. Livingston," Joshua said after hearing the whole story, "I want to help you recover what's yours. Mark destroyed my reputation, but I won't let him destroy your company too." In the following days, Joshua proved to be a valuable ally. His detailed memory of the company's old procedures helped to uncover other irregularities that Mark had committed over the years. They found secret bank accounts, fake invoices, and a trail of documents that proved the elaborate scheme of theft. "Look at this." Joshua showed Arthur a folder that he had kept for 5 years. "These are the copies of the original reports that I made before being fired. I always knew that one day the truth would come out." The evidence was overwhelming. Mark had stolen much more than the initial $50,000. Over 5 years, he had diverted almost $200,000 from the company. But discovering the crime was one thing. Recovering the money was something completely different. Mark had disappeared from the city after being confronted, and his bank accounts were empty. On the eve of the bank's deadline, Arthur was desperate. Even with all the evidence, he wouldn't be able to pay the debts on time. The company would be foreclosed on the next morning. "It's not fair," Lily said that night, seeing Arthur dejected at the kitchen table. "You're a good person. Why do bad? Things happen to good people. Sometimes life is like that, sweetie. The good guys don't always win." "But Grandma used to say that God never abandons those who do good." Lily approached him. "She said that when we least expect it, help arrives." Arthur smiled sadly, touching the girl's face. "Your grandma was a wise woman, but sometimes not. Even wisdom can pay bank debts." It was the next morning, exactly 1 hour before the deadline, that the miracle happened. An elegant man, approximately 60 years old, appeared at the door of the office accompanied by an older woman. "Mr. Arthur Livingston?" asked the man. "I'm Dr. Robert Anderson, attorney at law. This is Mrs. Helen Davis, sister of the late Carol Livingston." Arthur was perplexed. Carol never mentioned having a sister. "We misunderstood each other years ago over silly family matters," explained Mrs. Davis, her eyes tearing up. "When I found out that she had passed away, it was too late to reconcile, but she left something for you." Dr. Robert opened a folder and removed official documents. "Your wife made a secret will 2 months before passing away. She inherited a significant amount from her parents and specified that the money should be used to help children in vulnerable situations." "I don't understand," Arthur stammered. "Carol knew of your generous nature," continued the lawyer. "She feared that you would spend all the inheritance helping others and would be left helpless. Therefore, she stipulated that the money would only be released if you were actually taking care of a child in need." Lily, who watched everything in silence, felt her heart accelerate. "For months we searched for you to deliver this inheritance," said Mrs. Davis. "But yesterday we discovered through Joshua Farrell, who contacted us about your situation and about this special girl that you adopted." Dr. Robert handed a check to Arthur. The amount was enough not only to pay off all the company debts, but also to guarantee its stability for many years. $300,000, Arthur read aloud, barely able to believe it. "Carol always dreamed of having children," said Mrs. Davis, looking fondly at Lily. "She would be happy to know that. You finally have a daughter to love." At that moment, Letitia arrived at the office with Mikey in her arms. She had received a job offer from Arthur to work as an administrative assistant in the company now that Mark had been fired. "Did we make it?" she asked anxiously. "We did," Arthur replied, hugging Lily and reaching out to include Letitia and Mikey. "We managed to save everything." In the months that followed, much changed in Harmony Creek. Joshua was rehired with honors at the company, assuming the position of manager that he should have had years before. Mark was located by the police and prosecuted for fraud and embezzlement. Letitia managed to get rid of Ricky Joe for good, who was forced to stay away from her and Mikey by court order. She moved to a house near Arthur's, creating a network of support and friendship that benefited everyone. Arthur began the legal processes to officially adopt Lily. The girl, who for 2 years had lived without documents and without family, now had a father who loved her unconditionally. "Arthur," she said on a sunny afternoon, 6 months after those difficult days, while they played in the garden of the house, "do you think Grandma Mary and your wife Carol met in heaven?" "Why do you ask that?" "Because I think they planned everything. You finding me, the baby Mikey, the inheritance arriving at the right time." Lily smiled with the wisdom of someone who had seen much suffering, but also much love. "I think they wanted us to be a family." Arthur picked her up, looking at the blue sky of Ohio. "You know what? I think you're right." That night, during dinner, Lily asked a question that caught Arthur off guard. "Do you regret helping me on that rainy day?" "Never," he replied without hesitation. "You saved my life as much as I saved yours." "How so?" "After Carol died, I was just existing, not living. You taught me that there were still things worth fighting for." Lily smiled, finally understanding that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as challenges. She had lost her grandmother and lived on the streets, but found a father. Arthur had almost lost everything he built, but gained a family. And as the town of Harmony Creek prepared to sleep on that peaceful night, 2 souls that met in the middle of the storm had finally found their safe harbor in each other. The story that began with a girl witnessing violence and a man choosing to do what was right ended with proof that love and courage always find a way, even when everything seems lost.